And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to a new episode of the Wheelie Podcast. I'm your host, Micah Toll, and I'm joined again by Electrek Seth Weintraub. How's it going, Seth?
I'm good.
Awesome. Seth's good. I'm good. And I hope you guys are good to hear a bunch of new, not just e bike news. We've got several new e bikes to talk about, but also we've got a crazy 50 mile an hour electric kick scooter. We've got a 50 mile an hour electric jet ski and some other interesting small format electric vehicles to talk about this week. But where are we going to start off this week, Seth?
Let's start with the electric bike tax credit bill reintroduced, providing up to $1,500 off new e-bikes in the U.S.
Awesome. So this is like a mixture of good news and bad news, but we'll start with the good news. First of all, the electric bike tax credit that was proposed, I think like a year and a half ago originally, that didn't end up making it into law, is now back. At least it's been reintroduced into Congress by four different representatives, and it's actually better than the last time we saw it. Before it failed to pass last year, it had been whittled down to about, I think it was $900 credit, and then it had a number of stipulations. Now it's actually higher. It's back up to $1,500 where it originally started before being whittled away, and it has fewer restrictions. Now, there are a few base restrictions. It only covers, I think, 30% of the e-bike purchase price. So it's up to $1,500. But if you get like, a $2,000 e-bike, you're not getting that for 75% off. And also it only covers e-bikes up to $8,000. I say only, that should, cover just about every e-bike out there.
Yeah,
Um,
8,000 is a pretty nice e-bike.
Yeah, I think if you combine $8,000 e-bike, you're not worried about a tax credit kind of thing. So, but generally there are very few restrictions. There's a few income restrictions, but they're actually fairly high. So this would apply to most Americans, and it would take a good chunk off of an e-bike price. For example, if you're looking at like a $1,500 e-bike, it drops down to $1,000, which might be the difference between like it would be nice, but I can't justify it, and all right, I can drop 1,000 if that means I'm gonna leave my car in the garage and not pay for gas and not pay for parking and that sort of thing. I mean, I don't know about you, Seth, but I can see so many people making use of this.
Yeah, a lot of people actually, when they ask for advice on e-bikes, I'll give them an e-bike that they, probably should get, and they're like, "Well, I was kind of thinking more like $1,000 bucks," which is,
Yeah.
inevitably the case. And you recommend the juiced or the rad or the electric, and those are good bikes, but you know they're not the top tier, and maybe not best for everybody. So
Yeah, and
uh,
if you think about it, like the difference between 1,000 and a $1,500 e-bike is a big difference in quality. 1,000, it's like starting to be all right, well, but at 1,500, it's a pretty good everyday e-bike.
yep,
And so if this could
yep,
bring that down to that $1,000 price point that people start to say, yeah, I could do that. I mean, that makes a huge difference.
yeah, and it's weird because what an e-bike is a lot more than a regular bike. You get a lot of range, you get a lot of ease, up hills faster, all the other stuff. But people still have like, hey, a bike should cost a couple $100 type of mindset. So this maybe eases them into e-bikes a little bit easier.
Yeah, I mean, so theoretically it would ease them in, but this is where the bad news comes in because unfortunately, I don't see this having a high chance of passing. It's been introduced into the House, which, as we all know, is right now has a Republican majority. And the Republicans have, not to get too political here, but if we look at the original e-bike credit that was created a year and a half ago, it had like 20 or 30 signatories, and they were all Democratic representatives. So it's unlikely that we're going to see any large support coming from the Republican caucus, and without it, I don't see this getting out of the House and then moving forward to become law. So while I think this is great, I'm going to urge people not to get too excited because I don't see this thing having legs. But perhaps it serves as the basis of a bill 2 years from now if there's a different makeup in the government.
Yeah, don't delay your e-bike purchases for this thing. And if it does go through, it'll probably be retroactive at least for the year. So um, it's interesting that it's just an interesting thing that we've seen states do it, but the federal government can never seem to get all its um, sponsors lined up for something like this, even when the Democrats had all the houses and they just never got this through. So it's kind of a shame.
Yeah, it's amazing it didn't go the first time. I mean, I get that even within the Democratic Party, like not everyone was on the same page, but still, if there was ever a chance, it was, a couple of years ago.
Right. And I mean, when you think about all the uh, carbon you're taking off the road, all the fun you're adding, like I think a lot of people would be pretty pumped about this. So
Yeah,
too
fingers
bad.
crossed.
Yeah, fingers crossed, fingers crossed. All right, Acer. Yes, the computer company is building a fancy electric bike with built-in AI.
Yeah, so this is called, I believe it's pronounced the EB. It's spelled EBII. And basically, this is Acer's first stab at an electric bike. And I gotta say, for a company that has no business building an e-bike, it actually looks pretty good. I mean, it's a bit like sort of funky futuristic. Got almost like a little bit of a Blade Runner look to it. But I think that I would say that they actually did a pretty good job with this design. The specs, I mean, it seems like they're going for something that could be quasi-European legal, so the specs can't be too great. It's a small e-bike. It's got like a 250-watt motor. It's limited to either 32 kilometers an hour, which is 20 miles an hour in the US, or 25 kilometers per hour, which is 15 miles an hour in Europe, which keeps it European legal. So, this is not a powerhouse. Don't get, too excited that this is going to be some big beefy e-bike. It's certainly not. It's a small sort of folding style, uh, maybe, European style commuter bike. But I will say that it has some pretty cool tech built into it. In addition to, all these e-bikes now have smartphone apps, but it's also got GPS tracking. So if someone ever, steals your bike, which is a very big issue in cities, you can actually track it and figure out where it's gone. It's supposed to have like traffic sensors or collision sensors. So I guess if a car is coming up behind you too quickly, you can have like a second or two warning, like you better get out of the way kind of thing. And I think it has crash sensors as well. So if there's been an impact, it'll perhaps either alert someone, like some phones are doing now, that sort of thing. So they've stuffed in a bunch of technology here. And then the last sort of cool thing that we're starting to see a little bit more of is that the battery is also doubling as a portable power station. It unfortunately does not have like 110 or 220 AC power, but it does have multiple USB outlets. I think it has USB-C as well, so it can charge up, your laptop, your tablet, your phone, that sort of thing, and you can use it that way as a sort of a portable power station. I would have loved to see it have an actual inverter to do AC power, so you can run more than just DC battery powered appliances. But I think this is still a good step in the right direction, and it moves past what we've seen with a lot of basic e-bike batteries, which is a small, like 5-watt USB-A port. So we're moving in the right direction here, I'd say.
Yeah, kind of came out of nowhere too. Acer didn't really hint that they were thinking about getting involved with this. I do notice that like a lot of this is non-standard parts and stuff. It looks like Schwalbe tires, uh, but otherwise, like I've never seen any of this stuff before. Especially this, bar that has everything. So theoretically, it won't be serviceable at a bike shop. It does remind me a little bit of the Go Cycle. Maybe it's like the
The
the front
single-sided
arm,
fork. Yeah.
yeah, and the front motor. I feel like that was probably a starting point on this thing.
Yeah, perhaps
But
they looked at like a nicer bike like the Go Cycle, yeah. Said, how can we do that a little cheaper?
right, but I love to see it, and Acer with its you know computer background is going to put a lot of smarts in this, and that's super cool. Um, and they probably have some pretty good supply chain knowledge, so they can make a ton of these for a very low price. So we love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm curious what price they can do it for. We don't have any information yet on pricing, but with their manufacturing chops, you'd think they would be able to pump these things out.
Yeah, and when are we expected to see these again?
There's no telling. In
Okay.
fact, I now see that the video that they had showing off the bike has been changed to private, so that's not a good
Yeah.
sign for their,
No, not a good sign.
rollout of the product.
Maybe they just changed it or something. We'll have to take a look at that. But yeah, good to see it. Hopefully it turns into something cool. All right, moving on. Oh, not too far from that. You can now run electric bicycles from power tool batteries.
And this is something that we've like, talked about a lot, that wouldn't it be cool if the power tool batteries that you already have for, like your DeWalt drill or something could power your e-bike? Well, we're actually getting pretty close to that, depending if you have the right batteries and the right e-bike, because we're seeing two different companies here that have explored this very idea. So the first is Aventon that has teamed up with Works, and they've taken their Pace 350 e-bike, and Works has created an adapter where the Aventon battery normally goes. Now there's a plate that actually accepts two of Works 20 volt, 8 amp hour batteries. And so it seems like it probably puts those batteries in series, which brings it up to 40 volts, which pretty much matches a 36-volt battery. They're both actually the same number of cells in series. So companies sort of call them different voltages, but two of those Works batteries in series is actually the identical voltage of a 36-volt e-bike battery. So it was kind of perfect for this partnership. And so if you've got Works tools that use these 20-volt batteries, you could just plug your batteries straight into this e-bike and be off. Now it's not as much capacity as the standard battery that comes with the Aventon 350. I believe that one is it's either 10 or 14 amp hours. So you're taking a capacity cut, getting down to 8 amp hours here. They say it's good for 28 miles. That's of course on pedal assist. So if you're doing the throttle, then I generally say cut your pedal assist range in half. So maybe you're talking 14, 15 miles on throttle only riding. But if you're just going around the city or your neighborhood, then this would be a cool way to share batteries. And that has a few implications. For one, the battery on an e-bike is the single most expensive component. So if you can buy an e-bike without a battery, you're already going to save several $100s right there. Next, you're probably never going to be using your e-bike and your power tools at the same time. So it just makes sense that you would want to share the
Speak for
batteries
yourself.
there.
You don't do the chainsaw and the e-bike at the same time.
So
That's
that's
kind of
like
weird.
mobile repair service there.
You get the weed whacker and you're going down the driveway.
So
No,
motorized
okay,
edger, there you go.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't have the same driveway length, but I want to see that one at some point.
right.
So yeah, I mean, if you can share between different tools, and so you cut down on waste, you cut down on all of the carbon footprint that goes into battery production, and you cut down on the cost. I mean, there's like a triple whammy right there, in my opinion.
Yeah, and they build these things to be portable and kind of you know you can use them with tons of different devices. I think Works has like a inverter, which we've talked about a lot that we'd love to see. Maybe this is the way to go. Don't buy a one-off battery. Just buy tons of these guys and use them in all your tools and your inverters and your bikes and the fact that there's two of them and it's not super powerful is probably like the downside, but without spoiling the next part, there's much bigger batteries that could be put on here. And I would even say that like Works may have a good like product here that they don't need to just do to event in. They can make an adapter for just about any e-bike. Like if they made one for Rad or Juiced or any of the other big companies, I think a lot of people would be super into that.
Yeah, the tricky thing is the voltage. So it kind of worked perfect here because the Invention 350 is lower power, and so they use a 36-volt system, and that's why it's kind of perfect for 224 or 220-volt batteries. But for example, Rad or most of the other companies, and in fact most of Invention's other bikes are all 48 volts. And so I don't know of very many tool companies that have a battery that's either at 48 volts or half of that to run in series like this. So it's a little trickier with that voltage, unfortunately.
Yeah, Greenworks has a 24 volt, which they could do in series. They have a whole 24-volt line.
So then
And
that could be
then,
perfect.
right.
But
But
it seems like they want to do their own game
they have
here,
their
which is sort
own.
of the next part
Yes.
of this.
Cool. Let's get there.
Yeah, so props to Seth actually for finding this. I know we'd been on the lookout for Greenworks to be coming out with an e-bike. They'd announced at CES back in January that they were planning to move into e-bikes as well as other home products like vacuum cleaners and all sorts of interesting things that we didn't expect from like a, chainsaw and lawnmower company. But we actually already see three different e-bike models on their website. They don't have prices yet, and in fact, some of the specs still have like X's in them. So it looks like perhaps these pages weren't even meant to be up yet, or they're kind of placeholders. But it shows off three different Greenworks electric bikes that all are based around their 80-volt battery architecture. So there's a fat tire bike, a commuter bike with more narrow street tires, and a sort of Super 73 style moped bike. They're all 750 watts. They're all 20 miles an hour. And most importantly, they all use Greenworks 80-volt tool batteries, or I guess the 80-volt line is really more for like their lawnmowers and lawn tractors and those sorts of bigger devices, right?
Yeah, that's the kind of their pro line. I will say, like, we've worked with Greenworks quite a bit. They've been sponsors, but I have Greenworks stuff, and th- they're not that the highest end of products out there. I think probably half of my Greenworks stuff has died already. So
Oh no.
it's not they're you know they definitely get the low prices, the variety of products, but the quality control, and it's not actually the batteries that are the problem, it's the stuff around it. I imagine they probably outsourced some of this bike building stuff though. um you know they probably OEM'd some bike designs. These look a little bit familiar already. So what they basically did is put a holster for an 80-volt battery here. It's also interesting. 80 volt kind of equates to 72 volt, I think, you know, as you mentioned. Um, but that's still a pretty high voltage for but e-bikes. So theoretically, these could put out some very serious power.
Yeah, and it means they probably had to have custom controllers or they were very limited in controller and motor choice because, it's exactly right. I mean, this is a much higher voltage than we're used to seeing on e-bikes. So you're talking, that motor has to be wound to spin much slower because at 72 volts, any normal e-bike motor would be, spinning like a dentist drill.
Yeah, speaking of drills, we've seen not only DIY stuff like this. Is that a Black and Decker drill? I
It
don't know.
looks like it, yeah.
Yeah, and some people doing some DIY stuff that probably shouldn't recommend. Um, but we've also seen wasn't didn't Harley isn't Harley's best selling e-bike a kid's bike that basically runs off of drill battery and drivetrain?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the I think it's called Stasic, Stacyc, if I'm not mistaken. They bought the those kids bounce bikes and the battery they use is basically like, a DeWalt style battery that pops in. It looks just like a power tool battery. I'm not sure if it's from one of those OEMs or if they had their own made. I imagine they probably went to some company that builds drill batteries and just, had them produce the same thing for them. So I wonder which tool it would be compatible with, but it just pops in there exactly like it would on your power drill.
Yeah, and why not? I mean, these are all over the place. The one thing I don't like about just this business is that DeWalt and Greenworks and Ego and everybody else have their own battery standard. And even though they look exactly like or very similar, and even though they have the same voltage, they're not compatible, whether it's the case design or the BMS or whatever. And that's quite frustrating. I really wish there would be a movement either from the government or an industry wide to kind of consolidate around one battery for all these things. Obviously, you have low power tools and high power tools, and you can't have a battery that works with both of those different things, or that you have to have multiple. But it would be nice if, like, hey, there's just one 80-volt battery and there's just one 40-volt battery.
Yeah,
So
you're describing a utopia that I fear we'll never see.
right. Well, there's too much like lock in. Like for instance, I am a Greenworks person. I have tons of Greenworks stuff, and for me, buying a Greenworks tool, I don't have to buy the battery, which is a huge part of the price because I have a few Greenworks batteries. But like maybe Greenworks isn't the best one for me. If I wanted to go to Ego, my entry level price, I have to buy battery or batteries. So Greenworks knows they lock me in. If they make their batteries compatible with other companies, then it's just easy for me to jump around.
Yeah, yeah, and I hear you. I'm a Ryobi guy, not for any other reason than that was my first couple tools, and now I don't want to buy more batteries.
Exactly. And then you just buy more and you see a sale on a Ryobi battery and you're like, "Oh, I could use a few more of those." And then you're just way stuck in that ecosystem. It's a
Yep,
shame.
they got us.
Yeah. All right. Ooh, I like this one. Believe it or not, the Amish are loving electric bikes.
This was a really cool story for me because I really got to dig into Amish culture, something that I didn't know that much about, which is funny because I went to high school just like a few miles from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is like the heart of Amish country. And I learned so much researching this story because, as it turns out, there's no like one Amish doctrine that says, this is what we believe, this is the technology we use, etc. Every Amish community makes that decision for themselves at their local church. And so when it comes to bicycles, whether electric or pedal bicycles, different Amish communities have different rules. And in fact, many Amish communities are now starting to adopt electric bicycles as a common form of transportation, replacing a lot of those horse and buggies. And that might sound strange at first if you're like, well, aren't Amish not supposed to use electricity? Which is exactly what I thought before I started learning about this. And as it turns out, there's not really anything wrong with electricity in and of itself. The Amish mindset, though, is that they don't want to be dependent upon outside communities. So, they don't want to be dependent upon the local power company because they're not part of the Amish community and they would be, beholden to them for all of their energy needs. So the Amish do often use electricity, but they generally generate it themselves, either with solar panels or with gas generators. Solar panels are becoming the most common method, though, because it's just so much easier. You put it up on a roof somewhere and it's always working. And so you'll actually find in many Amish communities that use e bikes, public e bike charging stations, where basically there will be a bunch of solar panels set up and a bunch of 110 volt outlets lined up where people can just roll up and charge their bikes. And you don't even have to lock them because, like, an Amish guy is not going to steal from another Amish guy. Like, that goes against the whole, rule book. So, like, crime is basically at zero. And it's kind of awesome because before you had a bunch of these, horse and buggies, and it took a lot of time, effort, you got to like put all the tack on your horse and everything. But now it's like you hop on the bike and you just go, and it all fits within their like idea of staying within their community and not being dependent on outside sources.
Yeah,
You
it's
ever seen
super
anything like
cool.
this stuff?
Yeah, so I took my son to Woodward Skate Camp, which is near State College in Pennsylvania. And the way there, we passed lots of Amish, and there was still horse and buggies. But we saw some on e-bikes, and I remember pointing it out at the time, saying, "Hey, the same thing that you said. Like they're using electricity, they're cheating, or maybe these are Mennonites, or I don't know what the stipulation is. So thank you for doing that research. That makes a lot of sense, and also that's awesome. Like you know, they're kind of like living the world that I want to live in. Like maybe I need to go because I want to generate my own electricity. I want to ride an e-bike around, everywhere. I don't want other people not riding e-bikes. Uh, so like this is like the perfect thing. I just wonder, like, is this gonna kind of move its way up to electric carriages or electric cars? Are they gonna be driving Chevy Bolts? And then the other thing is like looking at this e-bike charging station, like they're not making their own e-bikes. Like these are like Aventon, it looks like, or something. I was trying to identify right there, but
So
um,
it's funny you mention that because apparently there are some Amish that make their own e-bikes. You're right. I think that is an event and they also that e-bike shop there, which is in fact owned by an Amish guy, by the way. I talked to him when I was, learning all about this. And so they have some really nice bikes. They sell a lot of Stromers there, but there are
Really?
Amish that build their own, and I really want to see those. I couldn't find any pictures of them. Pictures is another sort of
Right.
like borderline issue in a lot of Amish communities, which, like, man, I went really deep into this. I learned a lot about that too. By the way, side note, a lot of Amish will not pose for pictures, but they don't mind a picture being taken when they're not posing, because a big part of that rule isn't not to take pictures. It's not to be vain and like, pose and think that you're, better than someone else kind of thing. So just a lot of interesting things there if you ever dig into that. But
So
yeah, apparently there are Amish made e-bikes that I'm keeping my eye out for.
interesting. It's so interesting. And I guess, like obviously if e-bikes are legal, then, carriages, electric carriages would be legal in those places as well. That's that's pretty cool. And gotta say I'm a little jealous.
Yeah, at some point I want to go visit Amish country and like go meet some of these people and like meet this e-bike shop owner and try and find these Amish made e-bikes, because there's some really fascinating stuff in here when you dig into it.
Yeah, and like kind of understanding their laws a little bit better makes a little bit of sense. All right, moving on. Uh, we hopefully won't see any Amish on this thing. The light motorcycle power put on a kick scooter. We try ZonDoo's Unreal Z003. So this is a review I did of a scooter. We get a lot of pitches for scooters, and usually we're like, like what? How is this one different? Why is this one different? But recently, there's kind of like a Chinese scooter OEM that's putting out um, 5.6 kilowatt scooters. So that's 2.8 kilowatts on each wheel, which is insane. 2.8 kilowatts, by comparison, if you think about an e-bike, that's about what, 3 or 4 times the legal limit in the US and 10
Yeah,
times 10 times the legal limit in Europe
that's
on one
20
wheel.
European e-bikes in each
Right.
wheel.
Each wheel, it kind of baffles the mind. And of course, like you can, put that on the
Hey, this
road
is
and I should probably just go right to the end of this one because that's when the fun part happens. But basically, I'm not a small guy, but you twist the throttle on this thing and it just sucks you forward and you can beat cars off the line. You can beat, I almost killed my dog there. Um, you can, you can go up the steepest of hills without even, breaking a sweat. Um, but it's this company is called ZonDoo. I did a little research on them. That they've been around for a little bit. They have other scooters that do very similar things. So this thing is kind of crazy. It's the specs
Kind of.
are it's crazy. Like no one should ever do this. I put this together in my living room, and my wife, just kind of minding her own business. Then I turned it on, and all the lights came on, and she was like, "What? That it's like a disco party happening in here." And it's funny because not only are there RGB lights going, but they're not synced. Like it's not green, red. It's like one side goes at like changes every 1 second, and the other side changes every 1.5 seconds. So it's like it's like just chaos. But it that you want to be seen, and this thing has lights everywhere. It's got 2 front headlights. If one of these went out, you would be fine. You can still see in front of you at night, and people are going to see you coming, obviously, with all the disco party going. And then there's also turn signals on the front and back, which is also crazy for a scooter like this, for a scooter of any sort. And then you have these like wheels that you know they don't seem like they would be great on the street. They turned out to be fine, but they're kind of made for off-roading. So you can hit a dirt road, no problem at all. I was, going through leaves and just basically anywhere. It's not a problem. It's also high off the ground. I think it's like about 8 inches of ground clearance.
Yeah, it looked like a
So
lifted truck.
yeah, and it's got, reasonably good suspension. And so, I was kind of curious, like, you have something that's powerful, let's put a seat on it, and maybe it operates like like a Vespa scooter, because you're kind of sitting, you're putting your feet down, you've got the handlebars, but I have to say that's not the use case that you should go for here. On one, I mean, maybe it is, but they need to do some more work in that regard. So the seat also has suspension, but it also makes it very I don't want to say flimsy, but it didn't inspire a lot of confidence. Let's go through here, see if I can find it.
Yeah, it doesn't
Um,
look like the most robust seat.
no, and it also could have been a little bit higher. You see when I'm riding it, I'm quite quite compact. If it was a little bit higher, then I could have spread my legs out a little bit more, and maybe it would have been a more comfortable situation. But the pole was not very long, and it's like screwed into the platform, and that part is solid enough, but just not. It wasn't confidence inspiring, and this thing can go 50 miles per hour, and it really can. I think I probably got it up over 40, and there was plenty of room left. And then I lifted both wheels off the ground and hit the throttle, and it was instantly at 99 kilometers per hour. So if you're going downhill and you're quite aerodynamic, you're going to be able to go as fast as humanly possible, probably.
Wow. So like what kind of customer, what kind of rider would you say that this is designed for? Who's using this?
All right, so this is going to be somebody who wants to accelerate out of the block pretty quickly. Maybe you're on regular streets and you want to kind of be riding with traffic. So like if you're in a 30-mile-per-hour traffic zone, you could ride with traffic instead of riding, having traffic have to go around you. I rode this to my local coffee shop, which has a huge hill in between myself and the shop. No problem going up the hill. Um, I don't think this is legal on any street anywhere in its current form, but they conveniently put a sticker on there. Let's see if we can find it. That says it top speed is 25 kilometers per hour, which is hilarious because like you're a half a twist of the throttle. You probably can't see that, but you're like a half a twist of the throttle from 25 kilometers at any point in time ever. Um,
So
let's
did you
see.
have like a story in your head for if you got pulled over, like how that would go?
I don't know what I was gonna say. I just like maybe I could just outrun the cops with this thing. I don't know. You could just go off road and this thing goes over everything. Obviously, you can see here the suspension cover isn't super robust. Um, there's some zip ties holding things together. Um, it, you know, it, it felt very solid, especially the drivetrain, and I was super impressed with the brakes. Those are Zoom. What do you call them? And
Hydraulics.
hydraulics, yeah, on front and back, and they had some pretty good. I didn't measure them, but they have pretty good brake pads as well. So stopping, it felt very solid. But just accelerating, I don't know that people would be safe or comfortable going anywhere near the top speed of this thing. So the idea, I think, is like, all right, you have some dirt roads in between you and your commute. You could get this thing. You have some steep hills. You want to ride with traffic. All those things. You have a police force that doesn't, uh, you know, uh,
Mind.
mind or enforce, the street legalness of this. I mean, it's a 5.6 kilowatts. That's very similar to a Suron, which is a 45 mile per hour electric dirt bike, and the battery is actually even bigger than the Suron battery. So for me, it was just, I don't know, it's kind of crazy. And the all wheel drive part of it, like I'm pretty sure I could beat a Suron off the line if I stay on the bike. And that was the other thing. Like you know, I don't think I ever just threw down the throttle. And when I did go full throttle up a hill, there was a point where I was like, I need to I need to take off on the throttle, and I was only on level 2, and there's 3 levels, so it's just more power than any. It's for power users, right? It's if you want to have more power than you'll ever need, this is a great thing to get. So
Yeah, well, I can see that because there's so many times where it's like, I peg the throttle on my e-bike and it's like, oh, I wish I had a little bit more. So if you
right,
always know that you have what you need, I mean, like my parents' minivan will do 100 if you put the
right.
pedal to the metal, but no one needs to do that, nor do they. So, you could do 35, 40 miles an hour on this all day. You don't need to go 50.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I, I think this could have been designed a little bit better. So the narrow neck here makes this a little flimsy up top. I would have probably just made this a lot thicker, and you can unfold the handlebars. You don't need to do that. Like leave the handlebars, make it one bar, make it solid. Um, because this is a real like this thing can go really fast, and you shouldn't be going on folding handlebars at
Yeah, my
that speed.
motorcycles don't have folding handlebars.
Right. So build a motorcycle or whatever, uh, and my gosh, why not? Why not just build a motorcycle with this platform? You could really, or like a Vespa scooter. I think this is a platform that is going to see a lot more innovation because this thing costs $1,500. Like it would not be hard to make this into a Vespa scooter. The range is 60 miles plus. I mean,
Wow.
you
That's a
know,
crazy good price for what
yeah,
you're getting here.
yeah. And if this was a Vespa scooter, and it's not hard to build a good chair on here and a better handlebar set. If it was a Vespa scooter, it would be great. It's got great suspension. It's super fast. It's you know lo- long range off road. It's I think this is going to be something big because there's just so much here for a little price, and they're just kind of working on the form factor, and they need to get that down, and they'll be in great shape.
Yeah, well, it's nice to see, the bones are good, as they say. With a
Yep,
little refinement, this could be, really a serious vehicle.
yep, and we'll keep an eye out for more of those. All right, moving on. Can Lightning's electric motorcycle really charge as fast as a gas tank fill up?
So Lightning just announced that they've got a new sort of ultra fast charging technology in their batteries here. We often hear about DC fast charging, and generally you're talking about like 30, 35 minutes to get most of the charge back into a typical motorcycle battery. But with Lightning here, they're talking about a much, much faster charge, something like an 80% charge in about 10 minutes. To do that, they've teamed up with Innovate and they use their fast charging battery technology. The thing is, when we look at sort of the data that they shared through a YouTube video, it doesn't quite add up to this 10-minute charging that they're talking about. It looks like it's closer to about a half charge in about 10 minutes, which is still much better than a half charge in 30 minutes, but it's not quite to where their claims seem to be. And then there's this other sort of overlying issue here, which is that Lightning, which is sort of a boutique motorcycle manufacturer, there's some question as to how many motorcycles they're actually producing and whether they've delivered any of these. And the issue is that it seems that their production is so low volume that I personally only know of one person who's received a Lightning motorcycle. If you go on YouTube or like basically any social media platform and you search for these, you don't really see any owners sharing pictures, unlike like a Harley Davidson Livewire or Zero's motorcycles or an Energica, where like you just get like page after page after page of owners sharing videos and pictures of their bikes. So anytime I share something from Lightning, there's always a bunch of people that are like, oh, that's a scam company. I'm not sure that it's a scam company. In fact, I don't believe it is, but they have such low volume production that I wonder how big of an impact a partnership like this can be when they're just producing so few bikes. Now, if this technology was put into bikes from a company like, Harley Davidson or Zero that are probably doing, 1,000 electric motorcycles a year, then that could be something. It seems like we might be looking at single digit bikes a year from Lightning. So excited to see this technology moving forward. It's a shame that it doesn't seem to be quite as fast as they claim, but it's certainly faster than anything else we've seen. And so, if they can make this work and they can get it onto production electric motorcycles, and you can actually charge a motorcycle almost as fast as you can fill a gas tank, then that would basically remove the last sort of Achilles heel of electric motorcycles, which is their charging speed. Because once you get past charging speed, pretty much everything else is an advantage. They're more powerful, they're super energy dense, they're cleaner, they're more fun to ride, they're quieter, less maintenance. I mean, everything else is a huge benefit. So to be able to do an almost full charge in 10 minutes would be just crazy with compared to today's current technology. And I would love to see this happen. I'm just not sure how close we are to seeing this really becoming an actual feature on production motorcycles.
Yeah, and motorcycles probably don't want to pull over that often, um, but a 10-minute charge is probably useful for a percentage of people who want to do like longer cross country rides.
Yeah, and you got
But
to stretch your legs anyways, right?
right,
Yeah,
well,
I
that's
could see
cool.
this being, for touring, that sort of thing. Like, I mean, for me, I don't want to go like more than 2 hours without getting off for at least 10 or 15 minutes walking around kind of thing. So if I could, ride 2 hours and charge 10 minutes, I mean, you're talking about like some real cannonball run type stuff there.
Right. I mean, one way that companies like Audi were able to kind of juice their charging speed was like to make like only half their battery usable. So um, it was a much bigger battery charging a lot faster. I don't know if this is the case here, but you know, there's some tricks to get a faster charge.
Yeah, I feel like that would be harder to pull off on a motorcycle
Right,
because you don't have as much space to stuff all those extra cells.
right. All right,
Yeah.
cool. Well, good to see. Let's move on. Tarform unveils 50-mile-per-hour electric jet ski designed like a manta ray.
So Tarform is they're another sort of boutique electric motorcycle manufacturer. They're based in Brooklyn, I believe, and they started building, or they unveiled their Tarform Luna back in 2018 and started rolling it out in the past couple of years. But they've just unveiled a new electric vehicle. Unlike their motorcycle, in fact, it is a no-wheeler. This jet ski follows the same sort of design. You can even see in the tank there that these look like complementary products, or I guess the fake tank on an electric motorcycle. But this is obviously a totally different direction for an electric motorcycle company. What's really interesting here is just how like sleek and futuristic this design is. And of course, it's not going to be a low power device either. When you have an electric motor, you can put a ton of power into a very small package. So we're talking about 50-mile-an-hour speeds, basically as fast as a $1,500 Chinese seated scooter, if you compare it that way. We're talking about super high power. There are two different versions, but the higher power one is something like 120 horsepower, which it's hard for me to even fathom what 120 horsepower feels like in a jet ski. I know that our editor in chief Fred Lambert did a test ride on Taiga's electric jet skis, which were quite powerful. But 120 horsepower is, I mean, that must just be wild on the surface of the water. I don't even know how you transfer that into like effective propulsion at that point. You must just like boil water behind you or something.
Yeah, it seems like that would. I mean, for a vehicle that big, it seems like you would go right on top of the water. You wouldn't even be touching the water at that
Just be
speed or that
ground effect.
powerful. Yeah. But there's a downside to this, and how much does this thing cost?
Oh yeah, you're talking about almost $70,000, though that's if they actually produce it. So obviously, this is still pre-production. So, if someone gets to spend $70,000 on this, I would consider them lucky because we don't even know if this thing is going to make it to the light of day. Now, it's not one of these, fly-by-night companies. They've been around for the last 5 years, and they already produce electric motorcycles. So they at least have a leg up on some of these, brand new startups. But this is a very new direction. So you're talking expensive vehicle and a company that doesn't seem to have experience with electric watercraft. So I'm not gonna be in the first group of reservation holders. Let's put it that way,
Right. Yeah.
or
I
any group.
I guess this would be good for those that own yachts, though. You have your $20 million yacht. $68,000 jet ski is not going to throw you off
Yeah, that
that
must be like
that
the
much.
champagne bill for a
Right.
yacht like that.
A nice party. Yeah. Uh, but theoretically, if these are successful, they'll come down in price, and maybe mortals will be able to afford them. Although 68,000, like you know, half of that or a quarter of that, that's almost palatable for high end, high speed, really well. I mean, people are obviously going to turn their head on this thing. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, it looks beautiful. Like it's, I want like a paperweight model of it just to have
right.
on my desk.
Yeah. Yeah. It is super cool. All right. Moving on, we have. Oh, now this is a fun one. I test drove the only street legal electric microcar in the U.S., and it's wild.
This was very wild, which is strange for a, 3 or 4 horsepower car to call it wild. But these are sort of tiny cars. Technically, they're not cars in the traditional sense. They are motor vehicles. So, they do need a license plate and such, but they're a class of motor vehicle that's referred to as a low speed vehicle, or LSV. Basically, it's the same idea as a neighborhood electric vehicle. It's just the federal classification is LSV. So these are 25 mile per hour, small format electric cars, though not cars. They're four seaters, they're four wheelers, obviously, and they've got all the like basic car like features you would expect, like bucket seats, seat belts, air conditioning, heater, backup camera, windshield wiper, all that kind of stuff. Though they even have a few things that you're not going to find in traditional cars. A few of these models have solar panels on top, so you can actually get maybe like 5, 6 miles of charge per day. These are meant for the city. So, a lot of people are only driving 5, 6 miles in a city each day. And like I mentioned, they're 25-mile-an-hour vehicles. So these are not ultra fast. These are very much meant for, neighborhoods, cities. I was driving in Manhattan and Brooklyn where, I rarely got even to 20 miles an hour because of the traffic. I think the average speed of traffic in Manhattan has been quoted in different places at between 4 and 7 miles per hour.
Yep.
So, you're not really like, if you've got a more powerful vehicle, it doesn't really help you much because you're all doing like 12 miles an hour together in the same gridlock. So, that's sort of the use case of these micro cars. It's places where traffic is already moving slower, or, maybe beach communities, island communities, that sort of thing. Or the other place where I can see them being really popular is retirement village, like, the villages in Florida, or cities like Peachtree, Georgia, where golf carts are very common. And we often hear these compared to golf carts. A lot of people say like, "Oh, it's just like a golf cart with doors." To me, it's so much more than that. I mean, inside it really feels like a car. Like when you buckle in and adjust your mirror and turn on the air conditioning, like nothing in that feels like you're getting into a golf cart driving across the green. This felt like a real tiny car, and that's sort of the point. And when you compare the pricing to golf carts, these are somewhere between $9,000 to $12,000. That's basically the price of a golf cart. A lot of them start around $8,000, and you can find golf carts that go up to like $15,000. So, I mean, this is golf cart price, but you get a lot more than that. I would say the biggest downside is just safety, in that these don't conform to the normal federal standards for cars because they're in a different category. There are some safety standards. They have to have DOT compliant seat belts, auto safety glass. There's some braking requirements, lighting requirements, that sort of thing. But don't think that you're, getting crumple zones and airbags, because you're absolutely not getting those here. And in that way, it is, perhaps a little closer to a golf cart in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, the safety is like the thing that stuck out to me. Seeing you drive between like a cab and a bus, and this thing gave me the willies. It does look cool. I mean, it's, similar in size to like a smart car almost. Um, Although the smart car will probably be a little bit safer. This is four-door, which is kind of comic to me, but yeah, it's cool that they're riding around town. Now, so charging, does this have a removable battery, or do you plug into a normal outlet, or what's the charging situation?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's not removable. I was talking to the company, and they would love to do removable. They're looking at different options, but it's a bit more complicated, especially when you get like a 60 or 80 pound battery sort of
Yeah.
thing. So there are a couple models here. The lower cost model has like a sort of an e-bike charger, basically, like a brick you plug into the wall.
Hmm.
The nicer one here, this blue one that I'm currently driving across the Brooklyn Bridge, which was wild. This one has a built-in charger, and so you just need an extension cord, and there's a little adapter that you plug into, and it just charges like that. So you don't even need to bring a charger with you. But for both of them, you do need access to a typical, 120-volt AC outlet, like
Hmm.
you'd find in a garage or elsewhere.
And does it do 240? Can you? I mean, I guess it could be an adapter to a level two charger, or
It's a good question. So they both have sort of an AC inverter. I
Mhm.
don't remember checking the like the label to see if it could accept 240. A lot of those chargers can. Like if you look at electric bike chargers, a lot of them will say input 110 to 240.
Yep.
So there's a decent chance that these would accept 220.
And what about, so, say you're not in New York City and you want to get one of these for your local city or suburb. What's the process there?
Yeah, so they apparently ship them all over the country. They've got inventory there. I was at their warehouse, and so they've got a pile of these Wink vehicles there. And if someone buys them in like Seattle or something, they basically put it on a truck the way you deliver like a motorcycle, and it just gets sent out to wherever you are.
That's pretty cool. And these are built in China, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so these they've got a manufacturing partner in China, and so a lot of these parts are actually like pre-existing. Like they didn't create the body panels or the wheels and that kind of stuff, but they spent like a year and a half, basically redoing all of the components that make them street legal. So things like the backup camera. There's even a pedestrian noisemaker that they had to design in that like varies the pitch based on the speed. It's super annoying, and if this was mine, I would 100% cut the wire to wherever the speaker is
Oh,
because it
wow.
is just like it's super annoying. Otherwise, this would be a silent car, but you got this like constant like
I feel
noise
like
to
even if you hit somebody going like 20 miles per hour, it wouldn't be that bad. Like,
exactly. They just bounce off, and it's so low,
right.
you just take them out of the knees.
Yeah, it would be kind of like tripping, or I don't know. Anyway, so these are really cool. I hope to see a lot more of these around.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
excited by this.
Cool. So let's jump into comments here. If you guys have any questions or comments, add them right now to the end of our queue here, and we'll try to get to it by the end of the show. Carl in San Diego, the federal tax credit is refundable too, which means you don't have to have a federal tax burden to get it. So I guess that means you just get the money even if you don't pay any taxes.
Yeah, it's wonderful because those are the people that probably need it the most.
Exactly. Yeah, and we don't talk about that a lot. We talk about it as a replacement for cars, but some people don't have cars. Like, you're early, right out of college or right out of high school, and you don't have a full time job yet. Having some mobility is a big deal.
Absolutely,
Ethan Swanson, maybe call your representative if you have a Republican representative. Yeah, good luck.
100%.
I mean, you got to do something, right? Carl in San Diego's back. We can push for this in the street, folks. It's wrong that we have $7,500 for cars, but no incentives for bikes. I agree. Uh, and then a KLR 650 motorcycle for that price. I don't know
That's
what
probably
we
the
were talking.
$8,000 limit on the tax
Oh,
incentive.
yeah. Um, Ray Living Good. I'm using Greenworks 80 volt for my e-bike conversion, a Fido L2. I also have a 72 volt, 15 amp hour Samsung pack built. The Greenworks packs only come in 4 to 5 amp inch size. I purchased a battery balancer blender. That's an interesting project. Um,
Yeah, it's a tiny bike too. It's like 12-inch wheels if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it's 16
yeah,
inch. Yeah,
that at
pretty
and
small.
72 volts on that thing. That's probably pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And I guess we have the Fido fam. Uh, everybody's got their Fidos out. Carl in San Diego, I like this idea of battery standardization being really critical for our micro mobility future. I share a battery between two very different bikes. It's kind of BS that we can't standardize. Yeah, it's not just tools, it's bikes, it's everything. I mean, if Micah and I had time and money and uh, a penchant for risk, I think we could probably go into the battery business. And so maybe one day we'll have all three of those things.
And a good
Uh,
insurer.
yeah. I built my own bamboo e-cargo bike. This is how we get to local building. Okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Carl, send pictures. Legal limit make no sense anyway. 11,000 watts is the same as a 125 cc. I don't know if that conversion is right. I think maybe closer to a tenth of that.
Well, I mean, that'd be what, like 14 horsepower, something like that. I could see it,
Is that, I mean,
ballpark.
is 125 cc is 14 horsepower?
I mean, that's
I'd have
the
assumed.
engine capacity. I mean, you can get like 60 mile an hour, 125 cc scooters.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
uh when I was younger, I tried to get a Honda CBR 125, and it was an off-road bike. I don't know what, it didn't go that fast, but maybe it was also garbage. All right, another Fido. I guess Fido fam watches.
Yeah,
What was the
right.
price on the scooter? So, Ken, I think you're talking about the 5.6 kilowatt there. The price was around 15,049 on
1500.
Amazon, which is, yeah, 1,500. Sorry. And that's linked on the story. It kind of bounces around, and just ZonDoo sent me one. You should buy theirs, but if you go on Amazon and you do a search for 5.6 kilowatt scooter, somehow there's like 600 different ones, and they vary in price from around 1,000, 1,200 up into the 2,200, 2,800 type range. So
But we
kind of pick
can't
your
vouch for
poison.
those others, though, right? Like
Right. The
what you
ZonDoo is
see
the
on the
one to
ad is
get,
what
I
you
think.
get.
Right. So, all right, we're having Fido convo here. Moving on. Anyone familiar with the XPD e-bike program? Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not familiar. Gotta
Yeah.
look that one up later.
All right. Any firm timeline on the actual start of the low-income California POS discounts for e-bikes? I'm assuming that point of sale.
Yeah.
Follow up. How might the regulators verify that a cargo bike is a cargo bike, i.e., higher discount voucher?
So that's supposed to start this year at some point. They have not projected a date for it. It's kind of a like everyone just wait around. We'll let you know. In terms of the cargo bike distinguisher, that's a good question, and I'm not sure if specific bikes have to be registered to be, um, applicable to the credit or not. But if so, then that would be the way to do it. That each bike is already in the system, and it says which level of credit this one's good for.
Uh, okay, moving on. Electro TV. Micah's rebate prediction is very likely to move forward this year.
What was my prediction?
I think your prediction. Well, I think our prediction was that it's not going to move forward this year. So,
Oh, okay.
we'll.
We'll see. Them's fighting words.
Yeah. Nothing special about that Scooty. All right. Well, get on one and make sure that that's your opinion. The squeaking and pulsating killed me. All right, we're still talking about the Fidos here. Weight is a huge factor. Power to weight ratio of ETWW and Ryan scooters set the standard for portability possibilities. Say that fast. All
Yeah,
right,
I
we're
had
gonna.
an E12. I don't know how you pronounce that once. And yeah, it was like, it weighed nothing. It went like 25 miles an hour. So in terms of like power for weight, that was a pretty good one.
Selena Chen from LinkedIn is asking, will chips used in new energy vehicles still be in short supply in 2023?
It
I think
almost
the
sounds
chip
like a
shortage is,
marketing lead in.
yes. Well, if you think that's the problem, I think the supply chain issues are kind of alleviating. So hopefully that's no longer a problem by the end of 2023. All right, Danny Lambert, since the ZonDoo all-terrain is relatively new, should I hold off on buying one until they go into the next generation? I wouldn't let that be a concern. I don't know necessarily if the next generation is going to be better in the right ways. I would just take into consideration, some of the downsides. Like I probably would recommend getting a new seat if you're going to be sitting down on it. I would probably recommend kind of reinforcing, maybe even upgrading the handlebars. But and then maybe look around for some aftermarket or other 5.6 kilowatt options. The drivetrain is solid. The brakes are great. Um, it's got good bones. I would just say some of the optional stuff is questionable. So uh, I don't know. What do you think, Mike? Should he wait?
Yeah, I mean, generations from some of these Asian suppliers, there's like a relative term. I feel like the scooters just sort of slowly get upgraded over time. So I'm kind of, live in the moment guy, but it's certainly good to shop around and, like Seth said, like check out the ZonDoo, but there are several similar scooters out there that you can sort of compare different bits and pieces. Maybe one doesn't have folding handlebars or one has a better seat kind of thing.
Exactly. All right, that's all for the questions.
Awesome. So thank you guys, everyone, for tuning in. And make sure you come back 2 weeks from now where we'll be back with the next episode of the Wheelie Podcast. Take care and see you next